Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Colavito. I am one of the career development advisors here in the Career Center. Thank you for joining today's presentation. We're going to be talking about getting ready for the career fair, so brushing up on your resume, how to prepare to communicate at the fair with recruiters, and also just what research and things can you do ahead of time to be prepared. I'm going to be moderating this event myself, so I'll be taking breaks throughout the presentation to refer to the Q&A box to answer your questions, but please be patient just because it is me having to go back and forth between the screens. It may take me a few minutes to get through some of the questions. Also, I want to go ahead and plug an event we are hosting on Monday and Tuesday next week at the Career Center. We will be doing individual resume review appointments from 10 to 4 on both of those days. So if you have really individual questions about something specific on your resume that might not apply to the group, maybe save those for a one-on-one session and plan on stopping by the Career Center one day next week for those. So again, thank you for joining. Just a few notes. The session is being recorded and we will share that via email as soon as we get that from the system. So getting started, just want to go over the point of a resume. I'm not going to spend too much time on each section, but we'll talk about how to format a resume overall, how to research and strategize your approach for the career fair, and how to create introductions so you're feeling confident about how to introduce yourself to recruiters. A little bit of background before we get into that. I was formerly a recruiter for Deloitte Consulting, so I have been at many of these fairs, and they're not as intimidating as you might be thinking. So go ahead and have that expectation off the bat. You know, these are conversations. You're going to be there to be having conversations with employers. They want to be having these conversations with you. So don't feel like these are going to be the make or break moments in your career. Okay, so getting started on resumes. What is the point of a resume? It is to summarize your technical and essential skills that are relevant to the job or the industry that you are applying in. It's going to have keywords and only noun and verb phrases to keep it brief and concise. You want to facilitate a quick scan by a recruiter. I saw a data point somewhere that it will take 6 seconds for a recruiter to scan your resume, and I think that's a pretty accurate assessment, at least in terms of that quick first scan that's going to give you the checkbox into the yes or the no pile. And then lastly, it's going to provide sections of your information in reverse chronological order to make sure that highest and most recent level of achievement is first on the resume so that they have sort of your best and brightest in mind as they're scanning through the rest of it. So here's a little bit of an overview on sections. So on sections. So I mentioned that 6-second scan. So if I'm a recruiter, the first thing I need to know is, you know, what positions am I going to consider you for? And so that I want to know your education. When are you going to graduate? Are you looking for an internship or full-time job? What is your major? And so I can sort of put you into a certain category depending on the positions I have open based on that education information, which is why we recommend that you put that section first. Next, I'm going to be looking for, you know, what have you spent your time doing? What kind of experience do you have? And so you have your middle sections there in terms of your work experience, campus, research, projects, whatever it might be, your relevant experience that's going to showcase some of your skills as they relate to the job I'm hiring you for. And then lastly, we have a leadership section. That's going to kind of show what else do you do with your time? Are you involved in your community? Do you have essential skills from leading a student club or organization? What else are you doing outside of the classroom and potentially any job experiences that you have? And how has that built your skill set? So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these sections. I'll pause about halfway through and check through some questions that you might have and then finish out. But you'll see on the left and on the right, these are sort of in order of how we recommend that you present them to an employer. You'll see this particular student still has their high school information on there. This resume we are imagining to be a student in the second semester of their freshman year. So they've gotten time to have had some college experience, some projects and things like that, but they're still recently enough out of high school that high school information is relevant in terms of jobs completed during high school, as well as the actual data on your high school academics. Next is going to come your experience section. When you have relevant work experience that is going to relate to the industry where you're going to be working. If all you have is a customer service role and you feel like some of your research and school projects are going to relate more directly to the jobs that you're applying to, that experience section will be a little bit later in the resume. But once you have that first industry internship or some sort of work experience that relates to the work you want to do, that's going to be your next section. It'll be next to last is sort of the general recommendation if it's just showing sort of work skills through customer service or, you know, lifeguarding or camp counselor type positions. We have your skills section next. This is a little bit flexible in terms of the order that you put it in. I really like the way that this skills section is written in terms of the way the categories are included. Next, we have a research section. This is going to be an optional section. We'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. And then next is your projects. So this is really flexible. It's really great for the students in their freshman and sophomore year to highlight a lot of their relevant skills that they have towards a certain industry that they've gained through classwork. So class assignment, group assignment, extracurricular group project, something like that. Very flexible section there. Leadership is also a very flexible section to show some of those skills outside of traditional work experiences. So I'll pause there just on this overview. I do have more details on each of these sections individually, so hang tight and I may answer some of your questions there. All right. Make this a little bigger so I can see. Do employers want a physical copy of your resume? Yes, you should bring a paper copy of your resume to the career fair. It's a good place to have more of a general version of your resume if you are interested in different industries. You don't want to specialize too narrowly to only one field if you have a more broad set of interests. So you want to have sort of that general multi-purpose resume with you, printed out on some nice paper so that the recruiter can do that quick scan while you're having the conversation and have a little bit better understanding of your experience. I'll get to questions about researching the career fair in a few minutes. If I don't get an internship, I'm going to just scan through these. I would like to wait and answer questions that don't relate to the content I'm talking about until later in the session. Okay, yes, you will receive the slides once it's over. Sophomores, especially considering you just went through your first year of college in a pandemic, I think it is okay to leave your high school information on there. Academically, you don't need to list the high school itself, but if you have work experiences from high school, I think it's fair to still list those just because last year was such an unusual year. Is it better for paid research experience to go under experience or research? That really depends on your career interests. So I'll talk about that in just a second. And when we get to the research section. So I'm going to go back to the slides here. I'll get back to some of those questions. I'm going to try not to leave anything unanswered today, but just a little bit more detail on what you need to include in your resume. So heading. Include your name, your phone, your email address are sort of bare bones. If you have a LinkedIn profile that you want to share, you can include that link. And if you have a portfolio or GitHub that you want to share, you can include that in your heading as well. But at minimum, you want to at least have your contact information. Address is an optional thing to include. You don't need your location because most people aren't going to be mailing you anything. But that's something that is personal preference. If you'd like to include that, go ahead. Education is going to be in reverse order. So for those of you who are going to be including either an undergraduate institution or a transfer institution or your high school institution, Georgia Tech will be first as most current and the previous institution will be second. If your GPA is a 3.0 or above, we recommend that you include it on your resume. Overall, the majority of companies that have a GPA minimum have that minimum at around 3.0. There are exceptions to that, companies wanting a 3.2, companies wanting a 3.4. You may need to tailor your job applications accordingly, but generally speaking, we just don't want an employer ruling you out if your GPA is a 2.9, but you have great experience. Say their minimum is 3.0, they saw your 2.9, they didn't even bother to read the rest of it. Just leave it off, let them get an opinion of you based on your actual experience and what you have to offer. And if they really want to enforce that minimum, they're going to have to reach out to you and confirm that information, make a decision from there. But don't sell yourself short for those positions by including your GPA on a resume if it is below the minimum. Try to make them make an assessment of you as a whole. It's a good place to include any certification, study abroad experience, or honors and awards, just because you already automatically have the context for where you earned those things. But I would generally suggest aim for no more than 3 bullets per school, possibly even less, especially for a previous institution. And ideally, you're removing your high school listing after the end of your freshman year. The expertise section is going to be tailored more for graduate students. So this can come after your education if you are someone who maybe has switched fields from undergrad to grad school. Maybe you have a good bit of work experience in that window as well. And this is somewhere where you can kind of combine your skills into certain bundles that are going to relate to the jobs that you're applying to. You know, if you've worked in engineering for 5 years and are now back at school getting an MBA and you're looking for, you know, strategy consulting positions, you don't want a recruiter to read your resume and assume you're going to be looking for engineering roles. So this is a good place for you to sort of translate those transferable skills and highlight them in one place for an employer to understand sort of what you're proposing as your offer proposition to them. If you're doing a lot of research as part of your grad experience, you might want to summarize that information there. It also can be something that you tailor to specific job descriptions. So you're showing the buckets of skills that you have that are going to be a match for the recruiters. That way, because you do probably have more data in your resume, it may possibly be longer than 1 page once you're a master's student. They have a little bit of that summary there at the top for better understanding of what it is that you have to offer. The next section is eventually going to become the bread and butter of your resume, but again, like I said earlier, is not necessarily going to be that for students in their freshman, sophomore years. So this is the place where you put any work experience, whether it is in your field or outside of it. It's just going to show a combination of your skills and responsibilities. You're going to use verb phrases to describe the actions that you were taking in those roles, as well as any outcomes that were achieved. This will go further down on the resume if you don't have directly relatable experience to the jobs that you're applying to. So the skills section is going to be a place where you can just summarize specific skills. So if a recruiter has certain things that they have as, you know, make or break items on their qualifications list, they know exactly where to go to determine whether you match those or not. So this is, again, somewhere we want to really focus just on keywords, so you're not taking up more space than you need to. For students in lab roles, looking for lab work, whatever it might be, you can include procedures and protocols. You can include instrumentation that you're learning. The other thing to remember, not just for skills, but also for the rest of your resume, is that you're focusing on exposure. You're not just listing things where you have a high level of expertise. You're listing things that you have some exposure to. So it is totally acceptable for you to list something like Java or C++, even if you have just started taking a class on that. It's going to be a point of conversation once you get to the interview stage. There's no claim by listing it here that you have said you're an expert on it. So again, it's totally a valid thing to do. Most companies are expecting there will be additional learning that happens on the job. So just be open-minded in terms of what information you include there. I mentioned organization. This is all very subjective resumes as a whole, but I really like the way this section is categorized because you can list a lot of information in a small amount of space, and it also categorizes it really easily for the recruiter to be able to go in and see exactly what they're looking for. One rule of thumb with the skills section is it doesn't replace the context for how you've acquired these skills and what you've done with them. So if you're applying for a job where they're looking for someone with Java experience and the only place you listed on your resume is in your skills section, you're probably not going to get the interview for that job. For something that's important to the recruiter in the role that you're applying to, you should at least list it twice on your resume. You can have it summarized in your skills section, but you also want to show the context where you have used that skill to give a little bit more context for them on how it's been applied for you. Okay, I'm going to pause there and refer back to questions, and we'll go from there. Don't worry if I'm going out of order, just because it puts the most recent at the top. I'm going to scroll back through. Okay, should we include high school jobs after your freshman year if they aren't applicable to your current interests, including secretary positions? If you have something else to add that is of higher value, then don't include it. If you have no other work experience other than a secretary position, then having some work experience from high school is better than having none at all. But if you're having to displace a really relevant project that you've done or a great position you have with a student organization because you have some high school work experience on there, then absolutely take it off. These are some questions that might be helpful to have a one-on-one resume review, like I mentioned, the event we're doing on Monday and Tuesday. But as a rule, the real estate that you're taking up on the page is valuable. So you want to make sure that it's communicating the most important, most relevant things to the recruiter, even if it's not in a context of a job. Okay, what else do we have here? This is my first year. What GPA do I list? You don't need to put a GPA. Employers understand that you won't have one as a transfer student. If you do have a GPA from your previous institution, I would include that. Again, following the same rule of thumb, if it's at or above a 3.0, I would include that information there. And on the GPA, freshmen, just don't list a GPA. It's understood by recruiters that you won't have one. Oh, lots of questions around that. If I don't have many work experience, should I also put in not so relevant ones? Again, it's better to have some than nothing because any skills you've learned on a job, including being on time, managing your other responsibilities outside of work, any sort of essential skills, teamwork, customer service, whatever it might be, those are still skills. It's still relevant. So one, maybe two, if you have space for it within your the context of how much your other sections are taking up, it's worth having a less related work experience on there just to have something. Otherwise, they might think you've never held a job before, which isn't the case. So I would include even things that aren't directly relevant, especially if you're early in your job search and career. But as you grow in your experiences and you have more and more relevant experiences, those will eventually get removed and replaced. Should graduate students list their publications? Yes. So graduate students have a little bit more leeway on that one-page guideline. Some employers and some industries in particular value that one-page length more than others. And so some of it's just doing a little research into what the industry you're looking to work in cares about. For instance, consulting, we were hiring MBAs with 5 years of work experience, and we still expected a one-page resume from them. That was just an industry expectation. That's not necessarily the case for every industry. So doing a little bit of digging. Most graduate students will also have a publications section if you have a lot of content in there. Otherwise, it could go within a research or a project section where you just tag on the fact that you have published information in there as well. You recommended black and white. Great question. I absolutely recommend a black and white resume. And just thinking back to the template slide I shared in the beginning, it seems counterintuitive, but you want your resume to be as standardized as possible, because as a recruiter is flipping through pages and pages of documents, if I get to one that has multiple colors on it, that's what I'm going to notice. It's not your great internship experience. It's not your great project that you did last semester. It's, oh, he's the one who had red font by his name. So again, it's a preference, but at least within the US job market, it's typically expected outside of the creative field. I will have to caveat that architects, designers, those sorts of fields really have their own sort of rules for resumes. Their main hiring portfolio is more hinged on a portfolio than a resume. So they get a little bit more creative license on the way resumes are organized, but it's going to be better for you if a recruiter can easily expect and find your information to be in a pretty standardized arrangement. So that's why we say typically tone down formatting. Don't try to make it a fancy font or fancy colors, that sort of thing. You want it to be pretty standardized and traditional, just because you want the information to be the thing that stands out, not the visual context of it. And if I'm ever not answering these questions thoroughly enough for you, then please go back and type it again. I think I addressed the one-page link. For undergraduates, I have a data point later. I think about 86% of employers that we surveyed last spring indicated that they would prefer a one-page resume from candidates. So as an undergraduate, it's realistic to expect that you can tailor the content to keep it within one page. And that's just a matter of prioritizing what is important and limiting it to that. You can always address additional experiences in the context of an interview. Should sophomores include high school information? I think I answered that. Sorry, I'm just noting these so that they will clear out of my queue here. Will there be companies that exclusively hire freshman, sophomore? It's really going to vary. I can't answer that off the top of my head. But we say yes, understandably there will be more opportunities for upperclassmen at a career fair, but it doesn't mean it's a waste of time for you to go, because as everyone has heard, I'm sure, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so the earlier you can work to build your network, the earlier you can work to build your skills in terms of how to navigate an event like this, the better off you're going to be when you have those higher stakes years in your junior and senior year when you're looking for a final internship or full-time job. If I don't get an internship, will it hurt me when I apply to a full-time job? Obviously having directly applicable work experience is sort of the highest and best level of way to convey your candidacy to an employer, but it's not the only way. You can show that through independent activities. You can show that through academic pursuits. You can show that through clubs that you join, through leadership, through entrepreneurial efforts, through your own drive to get involved in projects in your community, whatever it might be. So no, that is not the only way to get a job. And we have whole workshops around this topic of how to position yourself for success, even if you don't get internships at the times that you're wanting to. I'll show you how to navigate to the career fair. You will be able to see the list of companies that are coming before the event. I'm just trying to clear these out so I can find your questions. Okay. Oh boy, lots of questions. I know we have a big group today. Tips for PhD students to transfer a large amount of information. We actually have a whole presentation on this. I will have to find the date for you. If you want to send me an email, I'll drop my email address in the chat. But we have a workshop coming up called CV to Resume for PhD students. that gives you a lot more information than I could possibly go into now around that topic. So please, I put my email in the chat there. Whoever asked that question, feel free to shoot me an email and I will send you that information back. I'm a grad student and have expertise in a particular specialization. I'm concerned there not be many jobs in this specialization. How do I make it more general? I would use your expertise section to do that, and the skills that you're highlighting in that expertise section, make them the skills that are in the various industries that you're looking for. Or I think having an objective or a summary is something that's particularly useful at an event like a career fair, or for someone in your position where you're looking to kind of branch out from what your previous experiences are. I generally recommend away from doing them when you're using a resume to apply for jobs, but they can be particularly useful at a career fair because you can indicate there the types of roles that you're interested in. You can summarize your skills as they relate to those various fields and that sort of thing. So I'm a little concerned on time. We have a lot of great questions here. But just looking at the volume, I'm going to power through our slides and then go back to some of these questions if we have some extra time at the end. Again, we have drop-in hours at the Career Center. I'll share all this information with you. If any of your questions are going unanswered and we don't have time to get to them today, I want to make sure that you can get them answered in good timing. So with that, I'm going to move on to our next few sections of the resume and with the rest of the presentation. Research. So like I mentioned in our overview, this is an optional section. If you want to highlight your research experience because you're seeking research jobs, this is a great way to bucket it out. If you're a grad student and have extensive research experience, this is a good way to organize it. It helps show your combined work-study fields and shows your data analysis skills. If you're someone who has conducted research either for a job or for just an academic pursuit, but it has nothing to do with the field that you're working in or looking to work in, you can include the same information as an experience or potentially as a project if you don't want to really hone in and draw attention to that research experience as being a big part of your value proposition. The project section and leadership sections are probably my favorite sections, again, especially for undergraduate, early year undergraduate students. So this is showing a lot of the same things that you could show in a relevant job or internship, but it's totally within your control. It can be a class assignment, a group assignment, an extracurricular activity that you're involved in. It shows a lot of your applicable skills and communicates that to an employer and is 100% within your control. You don't have to wait on someone to hire you to have relevant information in your projects section. So these can be something you chose to pursue. Hey, I just wanted to create an app. Or again, assignments through class. So these are something that you're going to list as soon as you begin them, similar to the skills, the exposure idea, and you're going to update it each semester and really tailor them specifically to the different industries and jobs that you're applying to. Obviously, naturally, they're going to typically focus around your major because that's a lot of the academic experience that you're getting. But again, you're going to want to tailor those to the area of work that you're seeking. The leadership section is great too. It can show volunteer work, campus involvement, community involvement. We call it leadership, but it really can be any membership you have with these community organizations or campus organizations. It's going to show a lot of what we call essential skills, which are, your people skills, teamwork, communication, organization, that sort of thing. And is going to give the recruiter a better idea of who you are as a person and how you like to spend your time outside of the classroom. And again, it can also just speak to your general drive and level of achievement to show what it is you're choosing to be involved in and how effectively you manage balancing your time between potential work opportunities, extracurricular opportunities, and your academic opportunities. So just a few tips. Here's our little stat there. 83% of employers in a recent survey prefer a one-page resume. You really want to be concise. We talked about that 6-second scan. That's to sort of check the box. Where have you worked? What are the job titles? What is your overall experience? If you get past that scan, then we go back and maybe do a little bit more of a detailed read. But when you're looking at a stack of 200 resumes, which, for some employers is even a small number, realistically, if they're being read by a person, which at some point they will be, you want to make sure that the information that you're communicating is the most valuable information to that person. So it's not better to have more if that is diluting the quality information that you want to communicate. It's important to focus on actions and achievement. So looking at how you have played an active role in the success of an organization. What actions have you taken? You're not using complete sentences. You are focusing on being concise. And I did X that resulted in Y, your action and your outcome. We talked about this already. You want to avoid standing out. Try to follow a pretty standardized format. Your resume focuses on exposure, not just your level of expertise, because any employer hiring a college student is going to assume that there's going to be some need for education after the hire. So focus on what you do know, not what you're missing. And then again, tailor your resume content for specific industries as needed. So getting into gear about the fair itself. You need to do your research. So I'm going to show you, let me see if I can pull this up now, where you can find, well, I'll do this at the end. We have a fair page where you'll be able to find information on the companies that are coming, any relevant jobs that they have posted as associated with the career fair, that sort of thing. You can research those companies ahead of time. If you're walking around and you see a long line at a company, or you see some swag in their booth that makes you think, hey, I'm interested in this company, don't just walk up to them and say, hi, I saw your sign and I'm interested to learn what you do. You want to have some base level of understanding about what a company does before you have that first conversation, because yes, they're there to sell their company to you, but if ultimately you want to make a good impression on them, show that you've done your homework. Whip out your phone in the corner, Google the company, figure out a little bit about what they do, and then you can have a conversation to get a little bit more in-depth information from the representatives that are there. So you're looking at the company's business model. What is their mission? Who are their clients? What do they produce? Is it a good? Is it a service? What types of skills and tools are they looking for in terms of the jobs that they have posted? And then note how you and your skills might be a good fit for that company. Once you have that understanding overall of who's going to be there and who you might be targeting, we call this making a target list of companies. Then you may want to prioritize them. Like I said, if you only have an hour at the fair and you spend 25 minutes in line to talk with one company, you want to make sure that that time is well spent. So is it worth it to you to spend those 25 minutes in line with this company that is, the number one on your list, or would you rather hit numbers 2 through 5 in that time? So just have a little bit of context around who you want to talk to and when, so that you're not getting overwhelmed once you're in the room with all these organizations. If you can, on that information, again, whether you have it on your phone or a piece of paper, have some information down on what jobs they have posted so that you can have informed conversations with them about it. And try to think of relevant questions you can ask to make yourself stand out. So whether that is asking about the company as a whole, asking about their priorities, whatever it might be, think about some things that you want to know about the organization. And then if you want to take this extra step, having maybe 2 versions of your resume with you, make sure you have clearly marked which one is which so that you're giving the most relevant resume to each organization. I wouldn't spend too much time on worrying about that exactly, because ultimately, if you're going to be applying for jobs with these organizations, you will have to submit your resume somewhere online. So your paper resume is not going to be the only resume you ever get them. But if you can get contact information, follow up with a tailored resume, that kind of thing, that's a good way to get around it if you feel like you want to then take that extra step. Lastly is, you've got your research done, you've figured out who you want to talk to and when, you need to get yourself ready. So I'm going to talk about this in a second. Dress the part. When you're there, you want to make good eye contact and smile. You're going to have conversations. The most important thing to remember is that they're going to remember speaking with you as a person versus speaking with your resume. So they don't need you to regurgitate everything on your resume to them necessarily. If you have that with you, they can read it themselves. But something I noticed when I was a recruiter, in terms of the most memorable conversations I had, sometimes they were not even about the job or about the person's resume. It could have been something totally different. So be ready to take cues from the representatives of the company. If they're really focused on talking about the job, then stick to the script, whatever it is you've prepared, stick to your questions that relate to the company. But maybe, a representative is there and is looking at your resume and says, oh, hey, I actually did a research project for that professor as well. Like, how's he doing? Maybe you have a conversation about that. Maybe they were in a student organization, apologies for my cat, that you were in, and can relate to you on that. So be open to have conversations outside of the context of these jobs, because often that's going to be what's most memorable for some of the people that you're meeting with. For those of you who might be attending the virtual day of this fall's fair or future virtual career fairs, similarly, have a printed copy of your resume, at least for your own reference, available. Have some place to take notes so you can be jotting down contact information or any relevant information that you're getting from these recruiters, and make sure you have bright light on your face. Don't have dirty laundry in the background of your screen, that sort of thing. I'll pause after this next slide to answer questions. So we had some questions in the beginning about dressing the part. Think about what's business appropriate. If you don't have a full suit, that's okay, especially if you're 3 weeks into your freshman year, that's fine. We have 2 resources for you here, but even without that, if you don't have a suit but you do have a button-down suit and some nice khakis or some dark pants, do your best to dress the part and just carry yourself with profession. If you are worried about the clothing and you don't have one, we have Campus Closet where you can rent a suit. It's totally free for Georgia Tech students. You don't have to clean it. You check it out, you return it, we clean it for you. So absolutely take advantage of that resource. JCPenney has also partnered with the university to provide discounts to students. So we're having an event with them on Sunday where you'll get a pretty big discount on professional clothing. So if you're in your junior or senior year and are ready to invest in a suit to be ready for interviews, then think about taking advantage of that to get a discount there. There's more information on that in Career Buzz. So I'm going to go back to questions, and we have one more section at the end. I do want to make sure we have time for going over how to introduce yourself to recruiters. If I have a really extraordinary and unique skill, should I include it on your resume? Yes, absolutely. Should I put information about the skills and projects I will work on this current semester in class? Yes, you should. If you're having conversations about them, just let them know that you just got started and tell them what you know. Minimum margins. I think the general rule of thumb is 0.5 to 1 inch margins. I often see 0.5, possibly even smaller, but I would try 0.5 and see if you can't work to be a little bit more concise from there. If you can't fit it in with 0.5 margins, maybe schedule a resume review and get some help in learning what to weed out. Objective section. I don't know when this question came in. I feel like it's relevant for career fairs only. I wouldn't have it if you're using that resume to apply to a job. It's implied what you're looking for by the fact that you've submitted your resume for that job. But it is useful, in the context of a career fair, especially if your grad date doesn't necessarily match up with it because of, potential changes that aren't reflected, whatever it might be. It's not totally necessary, but it can be helpful in that context. How much should you worry about tech screening? I have sort of an outstanding question on that. So, I mean, just anecdotally, it is not something that we did when I recruited with Deloitte. Um, we were very much eyes on the page. It was done as a team. We had team resume reviews, including many of the people who attended events like career fairs and information sessions. Um, but it's another survey type option. I think it is more commonly done for resumes coming in through wide open postings like LinkedIn postings or other postings that are open to anyone. The postings that are in CareerBuzz are specifically only for Georgia Tech students, so nobody else can submit to the jobs that are posting in CareerBuzz. They may also have them posted somewhere else, but the ones that they are gathering, the resume book they're going to get from CareerBuzz is only going to be Georgia Tech students. And my sense is a lot of those are reviewed personally by the recruiting teams that have put them in there, but I don't necessarily know how impactful that is on campus recruiting at our school. When we check online and get a 40% match, I would think that's pretty good. There's so much variation in terms of what is transferable and what a recruiter is going to feel is relevant to a particular job. So that's sort of my best answer at this point. If you want to follow up for more details, there's very large conversation to be had around that. But if a recruiter asks you a question about a skill you're just beginning to learn, say, I actually just started my first class with C++, and so I've done, part of one project, but I'm really excited about it, and I feel like I'm picking it up quickly, and I look forward to learning more about it through the rest of the semester. It's totally okay not to be an expert. Is an on-campus job considered work experience? Yes, it is. Is it okay to add research experience if you just started? Yes, if you know what you're going to be doing. Club research can go in a research section or under leadership. That's going to be flexible. Never use complete sentences ? Won't that look unprofessional? Absolutely not. If you Google sample resumes, I can almost promise you're not going to be seeing full sentences. The only place you might see a complete sentence on a resume would be in a summary or objective section, but within the context of bullets on your resume, it is not useful or helpful to have that real estate taken up by extra words. The best way to rehearse if one is socially awkward, I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I recommend doing it in front of a mirror and or recording yourself on your phone and watching it back. Even the exercise of knowing that you're talking to a recording puts the pressure on, for yourself to give you a little bit of the dynamic of that stress in a social situation. But I think some of it is also accepting that what you say is not going to be perfect and that you're human and that they don't expect you to be perfect. So don't let it be built up in your head too much that it prevents you from having productive conversations. Yes, they can tell you're smiling, even if you have a mask on. I mean, it covers various levels of your eyes, but I mean, you hear all the time that people smile with their eyes. It's going to be noticed in your body language, in your attitude, in your demeanor, in your visual, the parts of your face that are visible. It's worth doing. Again, they say to do it even on phone interviews. Back in the day, before the days of, video conferencing and things like that, you've always been told to smile when you're talking in a video because it just changes the dynamic of the conversation. I will try to find that information on where you find the job postings before we hang up for today. How do I learn more about resume reviews? That'll be later in the presentation as well. When and where will we know what career fairs? All right, I'm going to get to that. 3 more questions. Nope, I think we got them all. Okay, now moving on to what a lot of you are probably waiting for. Here's just some specific information on the career fair. Again, these slides are going to be provided, so some of this information is just in here for you to have for reference later. The other thing I wanted to share is this There are lots of other career fairs on campus. I'm not sure if you're familiar, especially if you're underclassmen. They are often specific to certain majors, maybe graduate students, maybe certain professional associations. But if you go to our website to the events section, we have a career fairs list, which I will share with you here if I can get that pulled up. Just need to switch what I'm sharing. Okay, so you see this here. This is under our events menu on our website. You can go down to career fairs, and there are so many other events happening. Some are hosted by companies, virtual events, but these are all things that have been given to us from the companies that want to advertise to you, from the campus groups that are having these events on campus. So make sure you check these out, especially if you see something or might be interested in one of these more specialized events. Obviously, our main event through the Career Center is the All Majors Career Fair, but I just wanted you guys to know that there are lots of other events coming up this fall for certain academic groups. So be sure to check that out. All right, so back to our slides. We're going to focus on how to talk to a recruiter. So I've given you a little bit of context there. The main idea is just, this is a conversation. This is not the one and only chance you're going to have to make an impression. It is not the make or break it of your career. It is a conversation between two people that doesn't have to go perfectly to go well. So there's sort of two parts of this here. The goal of your initial introduction is to make a good first impression, communicate some of your skills and experience that make you worth remembering. Your first greeting is sort of that very first, you get to the front of the line, you introduce yourself to someone. It can feel very overwhelming as the recruiter in that context for someone to come in and start talking for 2 minutes straight about their experience. That's not a normal conversational dynamic. So we want you to focus on a really short greeting to start off with, to give them a little bit of information about you for context, maybe be able to offer your resume to them during this conversation, but also allow them to respond to you. So that is sort of your low-level sales pitch for what we want you to be starting with in these conversations. So that will focus on your name, your major, and your year, a little bit of an explanation of your interests or skills related to your major or the industry where you're hoping to work. For those of you who are freshmen attending this event for the first time, you're only a couple weeks into school. So maybe you talk a little bit about why you chose your major, because you don't have a lot of work experience to talk about yet. That's totally okay. But just give them a little bit of that context in terms of your academic focus and or professional focus. And then sort of turn the conversation back to them. Again, a conversation is a give and take. You want to then turn the conversation back to them by saying, I'm interested to learn more about opportunities at Deloitte or whatever company there is. I'm interested to learn more about the business analyst position you have posted, if you know that there's a specific position posted that you want to talk more about. Or if you know the companies they have posted are for full-time roles and you're a freshman, you can just say, I'm interested to learn more about careers at your organization, to get a more general sense of how they do their hiring. I mean, all of this information is going to be valuable for you, but there's just those nuances of how you can sort of open that dialogue. An example here is, hi, my name is Laura Colavito. I'm a sophomore computer science major. I'm interested in your company because I've used Java and JavaScript extensively through my previous internship, and I'm looking for opportunities to apply those skills in a larger setting. Can you tell me more about the position that you're hiring for? And this is just one example of one direction this could go. They're going to look different for everyone. How you string together your sentences is going to look different for everyone. So I really want you to focus on the content, not the way that you say it. And so the way I recommend doing this is by creating bullets for yourself and practice saying them out loud. So that's where the mirror and the phone recording comes in. Can you authentically and fluidly convey the information in your bullets without it feeling like a speech, without feeling like you're memorizing certain phrases that you have to then regurgitate under pressure? But if you think more about just talking about your experiences, telling stories about your experience, it comes across much more naturally to the person that you're speaking with. And that is always going to make a better impression for that recruiter. If you're nervous and you come across as nervous, that's totally okay too. I'm sure that every recruiter was nervous at their first career fair too. They're human beings. They understand that you are human beings. So again, you don't need to expect perfection. Give yourself some grace in this scenario. But I think the more you practice it, the more comfortable you will be verbalizing it on your own. Then you get into sort of stage two. So say you've had that initial conversation and they say, oh, I see that you have interned at blank, or, oh, I see you've done this research. Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience or something like that? That is an invitation for you to go into more detail about the experience that you have. So that's maybe when you launch into this, I don't know if you've heard of an elevator pitch, or we call it a tell me about yourself response. But this is a more detailed explanation of who you are, what you've done, and what you're looking for in the future. So these are just some bullets on what you might choose to expand upon if you get asked a follow-up question about your experience, or if you find a window to sort of pitch yourself more formally in this way, where you're selling your skills to them. You're explaining why you would be an asset for their organization, potentially. You could talk about why you chose your major or why you have interest to work in a particular field. Students who are personally invested in the work that they're doing are better employees. And so you don't want to spend all of your time on that, but it is relevant and nice to hear for the recruiters. You want to talk about both your technical and your essential skills. So technical skills being, those coding languages, lab skills, whatever it might be, and tell it. So the bullet would be the skill, but you're telling it within the context of the experience where you gained it. So in my internship with Microsoft, I had the opportunity to do blah, 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 and talk about the skill that you developed. Or through a class project to create an app, I was able to learn blank. So you're giving a little bit of context of where you learned it and what you did with that skill. Same for the essential skills, those teamwork, leadership, communication skills. Illustrate how, why, and what you've done to gain that skill. So you might want to talk about communication. I'm someone who enjoys communicating technical information. Through my leadership role with whatever group, I present technical reports to management monthly. And then you sort of summarize yourself. We call this the distillation. You're describing yourself with a trio of skills. I can use technical skill with technical skill and this essential skill, which matches well with the qualities that you're looking for in a business analyst, or which would fit well with the needs of your company, something like that. If you're being a little bit subtle about it, I can use blank, blank, and blank, which may be very useful to your organization. What do you have available for somebody with my skill set? That's sort of a subtle approach. If you want to be direct, everyone has their own personal style. You can say, I'm very interested in being considered for the role of blank that that they have posted. So again, use your personal style to communicate this information. You want to focus on that content and getting that across. I know we have some questions and we are at time, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. Just a few talking points. Think of yourself as a storyteller. Remember that these are conversations. Try to be personable. Try to feed off their tone and their strategy for approaching a conversation. Be formal if they're being formal. Try to be a little bit more casual if they're being casual. Don't necessarily dial it all the way back. Don't try to remember certain phrases and sentences that you've memorized. Think about the content of what you want to share and talk about it. The best way to do that is by practicing it. You have to verbalize it. It's not good enough to just read it in your head. You have to practice saying it without a cue, without a list of bullets that you're remembering. You have to try to say it in your out of your head, and that's going to get you to the point of being comfortable having these conversations. And then lastly, just focus on connecting with these people and trying to build relationships. When you do that, then you can ask for their contact information. Write down their names, their titles, their email addresses, maybe any notes about conversations you've had with them, and then follow up with them with an email. That could potentially be the start of a back and forth with these people that eventually may lead to job opportunities down the road. So don't skimp on these follow-up steps, because that's what's really going to bridge the gap between, hey, we had a conversation at a career fair, to, hey, you're somebody I have a connection with within this organization. Just some upcoming events. Someone was asking about the resume reviews on Monday, so here are the details on that. All of these are also in CareerBuzz under our events and workshops page, and we also try to share them through our LinkedIn and Instagram accounts. If you're not following us already, I would suggest you follow them there. We have something like 65 to 75 workshops coming up this semester for both graduate and undergraduate students. So a lot of information on our website under the events and workshops section, as well as in CareerBuzz. So these are just a couple of relevant events coming up. I'm going to go back to questions and make sure I'm not missing anything. Do we have to send an email thank you note to every company we meet at the career fair? You don't have to, but for those companies where you made a connection with someone, they gave you a card, it is going to be advantageous for you to have that network down the road if you have an interest in working for that company. So I'd really suggest you start an Excel spreadsheet, start to track these contacts that you have and keep track of your communications with them. Because if you have that, you're a sophomore, you're starting it now, you do it for the next 2-3 years, you are going to be in a really good position by the time you're ready to find a full-time job to have connections at these organizations where you might be able to get referred internally to a position or find out about a role before it's posted, that sort of thing. So, you all have other priorities, other things going on in your life, don't break your back over it, but if there's some that are really important to you, it can really go a long way. You have to write out every acronym in your resume. Generally, we recommend it, especially if it's something that's not well known. I mean, think like I see a lot of KPI, key progress indicators, things like that are part of sort of really commonly used jargon. You don't necessarily have to write out, but for a Georgia Tech acronym that might not be known outside of the university, it's worth enumerating what that means at least the first time that it's listed. Yes, I will be sharing the slides. You don't need to register for career fairs. I believe that you do. I will double check on the website if you want to hang on. If anybody needs to get off, that's fine. If you started to learn a language, is that good to include in your resume? Even if you're not at a conversational level, you might want to caveat that language with basic or something along those lines if you don't feel comfortable using it in the conversation, but you feel like you have general understanding of it. I would just maybe caveat that. We don't suggest that you do that for programming languages, but it is commonly done for languages, just because typically there aren't but so many. And the difference between someone who has a basic understanding of a language and fluent understanding of a language is pretty broad. So that might be one place where it's worth having that explanation of your level of understanding. Okay. Well, I think that is it. Didn't switch over, but if I've answered everyone's questions, I will let you all get back to your evenings. I appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon. And let me just double check the chat. Okay, it looks like everything is there. I'll try to follow up with this soon after we finish up, so you have access to those slides. But my email address is on there. If you have any questions, please just let me know. And I hope that we will see you guys at the Career Center on Monday and Tuesday. It's going to be a great way to get some eyes on your resume. Yes, okay. Show you guys the career fair and the list of companies. Let me just pull that up and I will share my screen with you. 1 second. So it's in one of two places. I'm just trying to, let me go back here. The I'll share this link in the chat. This is a great, you can get to it from this link I have here, but in the chat here is just an overall link. The recording of the presentation is a lot of the same content you just got, but there's other, suggested items to research, questions like that. But let me log into CareerBuzz and see if that is where the list is. I know it's available. The other thing I can do is send this out in the email that I follow up if anybody needs to go ahead and drop off. I can make sure I include how to find this information in my follow-up email when I send out the slides. So just bear with me for a few more minutes. I will see what I can see from the student side. All right, here we go. So let me just share my screen with you 1 second. I don't want to do that. Hold on. I need to. So we have a fake student account. I was in an actual student's account. We can do a login as on our side, but I don't want to do that on a recording. So let me just log in as my colleague. Right, let me share this with you. Again, if anybody wants to drop off, please feel free to do that. Yes, the event was recorded. All right, I'm going to pull up. Let me just stop sharing the presentation. Okay, so you are seeing a student. Are you still seeing that? This is the student side of trying to see if there's a shortcut for career fair. But I found this by going to events. I'm going to type career fair as a search. That's going to limit, I'm going to have to go down. Right, so this is showing a lot of things. We talk about career fairs a lot, basically. I'm going to filter there by type. All right, so here we go. You can see here where it says career fair, this is the actual event itself. So once you go into the event, this is the event page. You can click attend. This is how you RSVP. And here's an overview. If you scroll down, 127 employers are attending. It shows you where it is. It shows you when it is. And then this tab up here are all of the employers that are coming. You can choose to filter by the types of positions, industries, or whatever else. Or you can search by name if there's a certain company that you're interested in learning about. And then for those companies, so companies kind of do it a number of different ways. They can post a job and affiliate it with their career fair attendance, which is going to show it here, or they can just post a job under their employer profiles. It's not affiliated with the career fair, but it's out there for students to search and apply for. Or they may be companies who are going to be coming on campus for on-campus interviews, in which case they are going to be gathering applications through the on-campus interview section of our website, because then they can go on to schedule interviews. So going to the jobs phase here, so you see 18 results. Most companies don't affiliate their jobs with the career fair just because it's an extra step. And they'll have them posted either just through CareerBuzz or through the on-campus interviews section. But this will give you the jobs that have been posted directly as part of the career fair. But most of these employers are, I mean, they wouldn't be coming if they weren't hiring for something. And so there's 127 entries in here, only 18 jobs. Obviously, there are more jobs available than that. So you can click on an employer profile and get some information on them. They have some information on their industry, the majors that they're looking for, and what types of positions they have available, even if they don't have particular job descriptions posted. If you click View Full Profile, it's going to take you to their CareerBuzz page, and then if you click Jobs here, it will show if they have any jobs posted in our system, which currently they don't. It will also show any events that they have signed up for. So it looks like these folks will also be attending the Supply Chain Day Career Fair in addition to the All Majors Career Fair. So that's just sort of an overview of how you can sort of gather information on how to connect with these employers. Fortunately, going back, now I'm in the full list of employers. The back system within CareerBuzz, as I'm sure you all know who have used it, is not particularly effective in the system, but that's an overview. Let me go back to the questions here. Whoop. Okay. Do you suggest that we attend the online or in person? That's really a personal preference. You should look at the employees or employers who are attending. Some employers are only attending one or the other, and that's either a safety issue or a logistical concern, depending on how far they're having to travel. And so it's really a matter of when the employers that you want to meet with are going to be there. Somehow I can't click to attend. Also, the times are different. If you're having issues, send an email. I have not heard that the career fair has reached maximum capacity, but you can send an email about that as well. We can try to figure out what's going on there. There are so many various issues with CareerBuzz, so you never know what's going on in there. If you have a question, you can always email careercenter@gatech.edu to get immediate help, or let me know as well, and we can look into that for you. All right, well, we are well over our time tonight, but I appreciate you guys hanging out, and hopefully that was helpful for everyone. And best of luck as you prepare. We hope to see you at some of our future events. Thank you.